I'll call the meeting to order, obviously we have a quorum, and obviously when Commissioner Glass joins us, he'll patch right on in, and we'll pick that up. So I'll call the meeting to order at 7:01, a regular meeting of our Public Works Commission, and we'll start off with a roll call, please. Would that be Eugene? You'll take care of that?
Yes, I will take care of that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hannon.
Here.
Commissioner Glass.
Here.
Commissioner Min.
Here.
Commissioner Garcia.
Here.
Vice Chair Simpson.
I'm here.
Chair Funabashi.
Is here?
And Commissioner Bajaj has an excused absence.
Okay, we're all together. We'll stand and salute the flag. We'll all say it together. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you. It's kind of nice. We really only have 2 items on the agenda. Does anyone see any need to change anything, or otherwise I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make such a motion.
Okay.
I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Hannon and a second by Vice Chair Simpson. If there are, we're trying to think the best way to do this with the Zoom meeting. If there's any objections, maybe I'll have anyone who objects speak up. Okay, then hearing none, we'll have that as a unanimous approval of tonight's agenda. I also noticed there were no blue folder items, so I will come down to the consent calendar and read this quickly, and we'll get through, and I'll circle back as we've done previously and look for an agenda, a motion to approve the affidavit of posting and the meeting minutes. Business items except those formally noticed for public hearing or discussion are assigned to the consent calendar. The commission members may request that any consent calendar items be removed, discussed, and acted upon separately. Items removed from the consent calendar will be taken up under the excluded consent calendar section below. Those items remaining on the consent calendar will be approved in one motion following oral communications. So we don't have any excluded consent calendar items. And before I move on to public participation, has everyone had a chance to review the minutes, and do any of the commissioners have any suggested corrections or amendments to those from the last meeting? Okay, looking around and seeing no hands go up, then I'll look for a motion now in a second to approve the minutes as presented. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, actually, I'm going to circle back fully so that we can not only get a motion to approve the minutes, but also the full consent calendar that included that affidavit of posting as well.
I'll make such a motion.
Okay.
I will second.
Okay, we have a first and second. Does anyone oppose the motion as presented? Okay, seeing no objections, then that passes unanimous. Thank you.
Okay.
This is our part of public participation. This section is intended to provide. I'm sorry?
At this time, there's no public participation.
Thank you so much. Okay, for bringing that to my attention. Having said that, I won't read the paragraph and ask for that public participation, obviously. Seeing none, we'll move on to item I. We don't have any items continued from previous agendas. Item J, no items for discussion prior to action, but, J, we'll jump right into J1, actually. Discussion and possible action regarding the Beryl Street corridor traffic safety enhancements, and I'll hand it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Funabashi. This is our first meeting of this year, so a little late, a little awkward, but Happy New Year nonetheless. My first presentation tonight, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. Oh, perfect. Okay. So, as Chair Funabashi had mentioned, my first presentation tonight, item 8-1, item J, is the Beryl Street corridor. This is going to sound really familiar for everyone, for everyone actually. We had previously brought this item to the Public Works Commission back in around February of last year, February 24th of 2020. Now, this portion right now that I'm going to be talking about and what the administrative report as well as the presentation will be about is actually the segment of Beryl Street from Catalina Avenue to PCH. If you recall, in February of last year, staff had presented some traffic safety enhancements along that corridor, namely temporary traffic circles, pedestrian crossing enhancement, and then some radar feedback signs, possibly some pavement markings on the ground. The temporary traffic circles were proposed to be installed along Beryl Street at Broadway and Elena, while the pedestrian crossing enhancement was proposed to be installed at Beryl Street at Francisca Avenue. The radar feedback signs, 2 radar feedback signs, one in each direction, one in each direction. They were scheduled and proposed to be installed one in each direction. The recommendations, including these recommendations, as well as the recommendations for Beryl Street corridor from Pacific Coast Highway PCH all the way to Prospect Avenue, were presented to the City Council in March 17th. Of the same year, last year, and City Council generally concurred, especially with this segment. City Council did concur with the Public Works Commission's recommendation that was forwarded to them for their review. Now, the reason this is kind of being brought back up is there were some recent concerns. Staff received some correspondence towards the end of last year, around December of last year, in regards to recent collisions, some near misses that were experienced by pedestrians, and then general just heavy use of pedestrians along not just the corridor, but specifically at Beryl Street and Broadway. However, as we understand, the corridor itself kind of has a generally similar roadway geometric layout. And so staff, instead of just looking at the single intersection of Beryl Street and Broadway, we kind of took it a step further and said, okay, let's look at this entire segment from Catalina to PCH. If you recall, this is generally what the existing traffic controls are. There's actually a signal down on the left side, the west side of Beryl Street at Catalina, and then Broadway, Elena, and pretty much Francisca are all two-way stop control. So the entire corridor of Beryl Street within this segment in its existing condition is uncontrolled from PCH to Catalina Avenue. One neat thing, though, is most recently we were able to kind of install a Class 2 bike facility along this corridor. And this is the entire corridor from Catalina to Prospect. But this picture here is taken, I believe, maybe a couple, 3 weeks ago on Beryl Street at Broadway as you're looking east towards Prospect. And this is, as you can see how the Class 2 bike facility, this is the full Class 2 bike facility that was installed along this corridor. Just a quick recap of the previously proposed traffic calming alternatives along this corridor. As mentioned before, there's 2 traffic circles that were proposed. One is on Broadway, one is on Elena, and then the pedestrian crossing modification along Francisca. As you can see here, we also have the radar feedback signs that were set to be installed along this corridor. As I mentioned before, so staff received some correspondence and just kind of general concerns in regards to some of the recent collisions and near misses and pedestrian-related conflicts that were occurring at the intersection of Beryl Street and Broadway. And so kind of went out and rehashed, if you will, and kind of looked at once again some of the previous concerns that were somewhat brought up the first time around when we were looking at Beryl Street. But this time around, we kind of took some additional information. So we looked at possibly some additional collisions that have happened since then. And so we looked at the collisions, the speed survey. Generally, the speeds have pretty much remained the same because none of the new traffic enhancements were installed. And then, of course, we did our field observations. And so the collision history, we went back 4 years. There were 4 collisions that occurred on Broadway, of which one of them, the most latest one in 2017. So we went back to 2017. There were 4 collisions, of which one involved an individual that had been drinking, DUI, under the influence. And then there were 3 collisions, 2 in 2019, 1 in 2020. There were 4 collisions that occurred at Elena Avenue, all that occurred in 2017. And then there were 3 collisions that occurred at Francisca, 1 in 2017 and then 2 in 2020. One thing of note, the collision history actually only goes as far back or as recent as October. And so the most recent collisions that were mentioned within the correspondence are not included, as SWITers usually take some time to get that information up to date. And we weren't able to reach out to get the police report information from PD in time, but this would only include the collisions up until October, end of October. And so any collisions that have occurred, any pedestrian related collisions, right-of-way collisions, anything like that have occurred on this corridor between pretty much early November up until now, we weren't able to get any of that information. But it's definitely information that we can get. It just takes some time. As mentioned before, we did, this is kind of a rehash of the speed survey. The speeds, generally vehicles are, this is a 30-mile-per-hour roadway. And so the 85th percentile speed, generally speaking, is kind of, at least from the Broadway segment on Borough Street, 33 miles an hour is pretty acceptable for a 30-mile-per-hour roadway. However, on Elena Avenue, as you can see, we do have a 37-mile-per-hour, which is kind of considered to be kind of on the brink of, can be considered to be a little bit higher than what is normally typically acceptable for a 30-mile-per-hour roadway. And then the last thing, and it's kind of more important, is the field observations. And we kind of focus a little bit more on the field observations than the actual hard data here, because what some of the concerns that were being brought up was the pedestrian vehicular conflict, and the conflict doesn't always necessarily get recorded unless there's a collision. And so, we're trying to look at near misses. We're trying to look at, instances where, pedestrians are crossing at these intersections and vehicles are speeding and they're having to slow down to allow these pedestrians to cross, a potential conflict, if you will. And so during our field observations, we did notice that there were a significant number of pedestrians that were crossing Borough Street. And there were, at least on several occasions, there were potential vehicular conflicts between vehicles driving on Borough and pedestrians crossing Borough Street. And so we're considering kind of a different enhancement, if you will. Our recommendation now is kind of going with the always stop alternative at each of the locations or each of the intersections. The always stop would potentially address the collisions that have occurred previously, which are mainly, majority of them seem to be the right-of-way related collisions. So the always stop would address that. But also, the always stop does have kind of an ancillary effect of assisting pedestrians and assisting with pedestrians reduction or potential reduction in ped and vehicle conflicts based on the significant number of pedestrians that we were seeing during our field observation. This recommendation, if you will, generally kind of falls in line with what we've seen in the field, that recently we're noticing that the always stop may or could potentially be kind of the I wouldn't go as far as say it's the better enhancement, but the enhancement that would potentially address the concerns that we're seeing at this location. So the recommendation, you should say recommendation, no S, singular, to the commission is as follows. It's to review the engineering report, to receive public input, and provide direction to staff regarding proceeding with the traffic control modifications for Borough Street. This concludes my presentation, and I am here for any questions.
All right, super, Gene. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, what I like to do typically in the Zoom format is to really just kind of give each commissioner an opportunity to speak, and usually just keeping it simple. by looking at our dais, I usually start on my left with Commissioner Glass and work through. So if you have questions or comments to make, I'll go in that order as we sit at the dais. And of course, if you don't have any comments or question at the time, simply say that and I'll move to the next commissioner. But Commissioner Glass? Do you have any questions or comments?
You're muted.
Yes, I was. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Gene, could you go back one chart, please? Okay. Got a question. The 37-mile-an-hour speed was up by Alena, wasn't it?
Correct, yes.
Is there any benefit in putting a 30 on the pavement somewhere, like in the center of the intersection or something?
We certainly could, but the purpose of the ones towards the end is basically vehicles that are entering the roadway.
Oh, okay. I see what
Generally
you're saying.
entering at a higher speed. Once
Gotcha.
they're within the corridor, you're hoping that with these stop signs there, we're trying to, they wouldn't have much of an opportunity to speed up to the next intersection.
Okay, I understand. My only fear then is that people might accelerate between the triple stop signs, and especially downhill. It'd be very easy to go faster. But anyway, that's it.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Glass. Any comments, Commissioner Garcia?
Okay,
You're
yeah,
muted.
here I am. So there was some traffic circles here. They tried them out, and now they're going for four-way stops. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, that is not what you are hearing. What happened there is the commission had previously recommended the installation of traffic circles at the two intersections of Alena and Broadway.
Okay.
But our recent field observations kind of showed that with the heavier use of the pedestrians, that the always stop alternative could potentially be possibly the better enhancement, if you will. But one thing I'd also like to add is that kind of internally, staff had a discussion, and we did receive a lot of unfavorable response, if you will, in relation to the temporary traffic circles that were previously installed within the city, namely the Fermona corridor and the Ruby Gertruda intersection. And although the data that we found showed reduction in speeds, a significant reduction in speed and reduction in volumes, just overall perception and reception by the residents were largely unfavorable. And so at this point in time, we're determining that they're still on the table, they're just slightly pushed to the side. And so in lieu of the traffic circles at this location, we're thinking that the always stop installation may also benefit the corridor.
Okay, so that's the staff proposal is four-way stops along the four intersections. I mean the three intersections.
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right.
Anything else, Commissioner Garcia?
No, that's it for now.
Okay. Do you have anything, Commissioner Hanner?
Yeah. Listen, I downloaded the package on Saturday, and I did my own little research because it's just within a couple blocks of where I live. So my wife and I walked down there, talked to a few of the residents that live on Barrel, and talked to them about the four-way stop versus, how they felt about a roundabout. And both of them, it was like they never thought about a roundabout, but they instantly thought of a four-way stop. But when I told them a little bit about the background and some of the research that was discovered with roundabouts, they seemed to be open for it. But anyway, nevertheless, I know that, in the past, we found the residents to be lukewarm on roundabouts for sure, but I think we need to make the roundabouts in the future better looking, quite honestly. I think aesthetically they look horrible and reflects on the neighborhood, and it turns people off from that point on. But anyway, I did take a look at, I read the package very carefully, and on Borough Avenue, I know we noted that we had a 56 foot wide lane on Barrel, and approximately I see you kind of filled in some information, Gene. I had 10 feet wide travel lanes, including the one in the middle, and you showed them as 11 feet. But anyway, when I started looking at it, I felt like when we did I'm going to say road dive, but when we did a lane reduction width-wise, normally brought the average speed down 2 or 3 miles an hour, which wasn't huge, but it was significant enough. And it seems like in this case, 3 or 4 miles an hour would make, in many cases, bring down the 85 percentile to something that was a little bit more palatable. So I was going to propose that maybe we take a look at reducing the lane width, and doing that. Of course, I know that what was being proposed was curb outs and maybe building out, but I like that idea. But when I took a look at the parked cars and the lane that signifies kind of the outer perimeter of the travel lane to designate where the cars would park, I measured that off about 7 feet, and which I thought was good, by the way, because when I took a look at the Class 2 bike lanes, most of them were 5 feet, which is desirable, and it was great to see that. But I was kind of hoping that with the width that we have, and if we went from, I think you showed on your chart, it was 12 feet wide lanes. If we went from 12 feet down to, I'd like to see them at 9 feet, but if we got them at 10 feet, that would give the cyclist a little buffer distance like we have on the Esplanade, which would be, give them a cushion to avoid the door zone. So in my calculations, it would work out really nice if we could bring those 3 lanes down to 10 feet even. And it looks to me like we'd have plenty of buffer there for not just to allow the bike lane to be 5 feet, which is what it is today, but also to move it out further away from the parked cars by a foot or two. So that was going to be my recommendation. And I did think that, there's no crosswalks, and you're right, that is a very walkable area. My wife and I walk down that street all the time, and so we're familiar with the number of people that use it. And I saw the earlier package, and of course, you were proposing roundabouts, and something that we've noticed too, because I know that we've decided to go with a 4-way stop on Broadway and Torrance Boulevard, which I think was the right thing to do. And, when we looked at all the options, it seemed to make sense. But living in that area, what I found is the traffic is moving further over to other north-south streets where normally were a little bit quieter. Now they picked up more traffic in those areas because people it's like speed humps, they don't want to stop at a 4-way stop, so they move over to the next street. And that's some of the things that I and my neighbors have observed, is the traffic is actually increased north and south onto the smaller streets. So with that in mind, looking at the roundabouts, I thought that was a good solution, because roundabouts, as we found out in North Redondo, that they did in fact reduce the speeds by 5 to 7 miles an hour, I think was some of the data that we showed before and after. And I know they didn't like them because, least all the people I know that lived in that area, they didn't like the looks of them. But in this case, I thought it would be appropriate. And I know there's some downsides too to it, but you know, I was also kind of brushing up on my roundabout material, and I went to the Federal Highway Administration, kind of looked at some of their crash data, and I know that that's a huge concern with the neighbors in that area. Speeds, you know, traffic volumes, and then they've had their share of crashes, including some pedestrian crashes. But you know, and I know you put it in the original package that roundabouts, you know, make a significant reduction. But I looked at it again from a national standpoint, and you know, it was most cities are seeing 54% fewer collisions as about a roundabout. They're seeing 76% less fatal and serious injuries because of a roundabout. Again, based on our information that we collected in North Redondo, we saw an 8 to 10 mile per hour reduction with the roundabouts. I've always said, you know, roundabouts, they actually, I think they add more predictable behavior to motorists compared to four-way stops. There's no left turn collisions. There's a reduction in gas consumption and pollutions. I know that, you know, it's a cultural thing. We're not comfortable with them, and I don't know how we can force people to become comfortable with them unless we have them in place. But I was kind of hoping that we would at least have another opportunity to pilot it in this area. I felt like it had all the characteristics of something that was really workable. And the thought of maybe moving that, you know, having a four-way stop at every intersection on Barrel, I get it for the people that are living on Barrel, but I also get it, the fact that they'll just be moving more of the traffic back into the other little arteries that on Diamond and the rest of the streets. I'm just not sure that we're not just shifting the problem over to another neighborhood where it seems like roundabouts don't seem to do that. Anyway, I'll probably have some more questions later, but that was kind of based on my observations. So.
Okay, Commissioner Hannon, thank you. And obviously input greatly appreciated. I'll pass the baton now to Commissioner Min.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I kind of echo some of Commissioner Hannon's comments in terms of the roundabouts. I remember when this came up in the commission last time, and you know, I actually had put in an amending motion to remove them on the eastern portion of Barrel, but to keep them here. Because I felt, you know, and I still feel that they could be a good solution to the speeding issues along this stretch of Barrel. Of course, you know, the stop signs will completely stop people from moving, you know, at least temporarily, and to slow traffic down. But also, I think what Commissioner Hannon says is very real. It could be just shifting the problem somewhere else. Maybe over to Carmelina or Diamond Street or somewhere else even further away where people are cutting through to try to get to PCH or Catalina. So I feel somewhat conflicted about this this change to propose the all-way stop versus the roundabouts. I still think that we should try them, even though I know they probably didn't go over very well in other parts of North Redondo. And I've seen the ones that were installed in Fremona. I thought they were okay. But also that Fremona was a very, very, you know, neighborhood level street, right? This is a little bit more heavy, slightly more heavy street with a little more volumes. Kind of a whole different thing. And so I feel that there's a couple things too. You know, when this was proposed before, the bike lanes were in. I remember that when we discussed some of the other issues about slowing traffic, just having the bike lanes in narrows the lane and will most likely reduce the 85th percentile. I mean, you're showing that it, you know, has, I don't know, I can't tell if it was actually reduced from before, or the 85th percentile you're showing is current, as compared to before. I'd be curious to see what the difference is from before and after the bike lane install. So that combined with the roundabouts may actually have a very positive impact. So I'm kind of, I guess, leaning towards still recommending the roundabouts here, and seeing how it goes. And of course, if it just doesn't work, then, you know, then maybe we go back to the always stops. But this is a very different context than the other neighborhood streets that the roundabouts were installed in before that didn't go over so well with the neighborhood. So I would kind of encourage us to, as a commission here, to try it out on a street like this and see what happens. And you know, if it goes over well, then there's opportunities then to make them look nice, right? You know, make them more permanent, install landscaping in the future, make it kind of a community thing, instead of just, you know, a temporary measure. So those are kind of my comments on that. Be curious to hear what everyone else has to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Min. I'll hand it now over to Vice Chair Simpson.
Well, you know, as I've said before, partly because I lived in Ireland for a year, I'm a tremendous fan of roundabouts, and I would have thought this would be a good place to put them in. My impression is that we're drawing the conclusion based on all the temporary ones that we put in that people don't like them or can't get comfortable with them. That seems to be the case. I'm not sure. I thought I saw that this was being coordinated to some extent with the with Councilman Lowenstein from that district. Has he had a position on roundabouts?
Not that I'm aware of, or at least not explicitly. This is, yeah.
But I mean, I guess what I sense is happening is that the department feels that roundabouts just haven't been successful and accepted, and so this isn't worth doing here. But we have to do something, and four-way stops would be the next best thing to do. And you know, I'm somewhat sympathetic to that position. I think we've got to do something on this place to get speeds under control. And if we're certain that we're going to put roundabouts in and they'll be there 6 months and then we take them out, maybe we just should do the four-way stops. But as the other commissioners were, I'm conflicted. This did seem to be a place that was completely appropriate for their use. My only other question would be, if we do the four-way stops here, would there be any advantage to adding some bulb outs at the crosswalks in appropriate places? I don't know if that also would offer some traffic calming and that sort of thing. But I guess the bottom line for me is simply, if everyone is convinced that we're going to put roundabouts in and then take them out in 6 months, then we might as well just go to the four-way stops. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may chime in now, a couple of things. One, I travel Barrow quite often as well. And so when I saw this come up on the agenda, I was like, holy smokes, 3 stop signs between Catalina and PCH. And yet, look at the data. I mean, if our average speed is 37 in a 30, I've said this numerous times over the years in meetings, you know, it's unfortunate that even the entry-level cars now have such great acceleration and braking. People, whether they're going eastbound or westbound, they hit eastbound Barrel at Catalina, and it's like, wow, how fast can I get to PCH? Can I make the light? You know, people just, and vice versa. How quickly can I go slightly downhill? It's an incline to the west. How quickly can I get to the harbor? So there's, and even looking at the side swipes, the collision data is obviously, I think, barring the DUI, is speed related, although I can imagine how difficult it must be to pull out of any of those 3 streets onto, especially if you're crossing over traffic on a left turn on one of those side streets. Cars are coming up so quick And I actually was just behind a collision that actually happened by the shopping center. This was sometime last year. And I didn't see it, but I heard it and kind of rolled up on it. And sure enough, it was someone who had pulled out of southbound into Burrell, and they just sideswiped right into him. So speed and visuals and all that. I think I might have made some comments at the last meeting about our attempt to implement traffic circles. And unfortunately, as much as a commission, we all get behind them. We know how they work. The city of Redondo Beach residents do not generally. And they obviously, the fact that we start off with the temporary in advance just to try it out, obviously aesthetically, it's never going to be pleasing. And yet I don't know how any of us is going to vote to bite the bullet to bypass the temporary and jump right to the nice planter. That's what I think we need to look for in the future, is that intersection that we're going to make a full commitment on, that we really truly believe, and maybe with a little more public input. But the public has been pretty straightforward and very clear, a bit outspoken even in social media, of what idiots we are for putting in these traffic circles. And it's just, you can beat your head up against the wall all day long to try to accomplish what we're trying to do, saving gas, saving brakes. We have all the great arguments, but the public at large is not buying it. And lastly, when you look at the bottom line, we can put four-way stops at 3 intersections for $2,000. For $2,000, you can't even put in a temporary at one of them. And if the neighbors, Commissioner Hannon, I'm appreciative of your exercise in going on the walk there and actually talking to some neighbors who might be open to it. That's great, and it gave me a glimmer of hope. But I just kind of come back to reality. I think, unfortunately, this is, I just don't think the traffic circles, as much as we may want them, are going to go over well. And, so I'm kind of, obviously at this point, I think obviously four-way stops at all 3. And the fact that Beryl is more of a thoroughfare for a lot of visitors, and even there's some truck traffic in and out of the shopping center and down into, going down Beryl to make deliveries down at the Portofino and the hotel on Harbor. And so, we've got, it's not residential, even like Fremona. To see, and I thought Fremona was great. I thought what we did up by Paris Middle School was good. Even what we had up in North Redondo, at Plant, but people just, all 3 of those failed in the end. And so as much as we might want it, I think, and obviously there's some budget issues, obviously, I think to streamline it, really the four-way stop just seems to be kind of the way to go. And I think it's probably going to be the most well-received. People will get it. There's still going to be some people complaining because now they got to stop 3 times and all that involves. But as was stated in the report, I think it corrects those accidents. It's correctable that way. The additional pedestrian crossings, I think, that will be added at all 3. At one point I even thought, gosh, could we just do maybe 1 4-way stop, in the middle? And yet look at the accident data. It seems like all 3 of those intersections have, almost an identical amount of collisions and similar types. So, I'm kind of resigned to, just kind of sucking up and doing the 4-way as was proposed. And although I am a bit curious to see how, obviously, if this obviously goes up to mayor and council, what discussion public might bring to that council meeting that might support it in a traffic circle. I don't know. Obviously, maybe I've said enough, and at this point, I'll turn to staff. Do we have anyone in the public who has come to address us in this matter?
For the record, there are no public comments.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I can go back through, maybe some of you have some additional questions or comments to make on the commission. I see some hands. Okay, so Jim, I saw your hand go up first, so I will hand it over to you.
Okay, listen, I get everything you're saying, and I know that roundabouts have not been, people have not fallen in love with them like I was hoping they might. But, you know, I got to tell you too, on the Esplanade, the one we have at the south end of Redondo Beach, I remember going to a couple meetings, and this was many years ago, and when they were going to put that Esplanade in, a roundabout in, and you would think that this thing was just tragic. I mean, the uproar and people, you know, once it was in, you know, it was, they didn't like it right away, I will tell you that. And even the people in Torrance, because it's right on the border. But eventually now, I think if you tried to take it out, they would strongly resist taking it out. So somewhere along the line, that neighborhood seemed to embrace it. But the other thing I did want to bring up is the fact that what I also noticed is there's no crosswalks. You know, there's a crosswalk on Catalina and there's a crosswalk on Pacific Coast Highway, but there are no crosswalks in any of the other 3 streets that are in between those. And I kind of felt that the fact if we actually had a well-lit crosswalk, that most of the pedestrians would be taking that and utilizing it. And I think also, you know, Min said, which kind of resonated with me, is the fact that most of the crash data happened before the bike lanes went in. And you know, so there's opportunities there to reduce lane width. There's, we know that typically having bike lanes down a street next to an auto travel lane actually reduces the speeds too. So, and it creates a better behaved universe. So anyway, it might be something else. I'm rambling on. I apologize for that, but I do think there's an opportunity here to maybe take a look at having one 4-way stop in the middle, having an actual crosswalk. And I think that could solve some of the issues with the pedestrians for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hannon. And I'll ask if you don't mind, if you can unraise your hand. And I see Vice Chair Simpson's hand has gone up, so I'll hand the floor over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, part of your proposal, besides the 4-way stops, is in fact adding crosswalks at all of those places, right? So that I think, as I understood it, is part of it. And again, I reluctantly have come into the conclusion that we've got to do something there, and the 4-way stop solution is in fact the one that the people understand and will probably have the most immediate effect. And reluctantly, that's how I would probably be voting to support the staff recommendation, with perhaps the proviso that we really work to find some place where we can find a truly successful roundabout in the city. And I'll add one other little thing of interest. We all might want to be watching what goes on Hermosa Beach. I understand they're going to be putting a roundabout at on Prospect Avenue, I believe, at 10th Street, which could be interesting. So I don't know if it's appropriate or not. I mean, I would be inclined to make a motion to accept staff's recommendation as proposed, with the addition that continue to search for appropriate locations for roundabouts.
Okay, well, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, I'd make that motion. Again, to repeat it, that we accept the staff's proposal for the 4-way stops, the enhanced pedestrian crosswalks, and that staff be expressly charged with doing research to find an appropriate place for roundabouts.
Okay, that's a pretty clear motion. Do we have a second from the commission?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion, obviously, a second by Commissioner Glass. Any further discussion? Otherwise, I will call. Okay, was that Commissioner Min?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity just to discuss this very briefly. The only comment I have, I understand the sort of the hesitancy in doing this at this location, especially when there is a a perfectly good alternative with all-way stops to slow traffic. I guess my concern is that if we just keep punting it down the road, there may not be another good location to do this somewhere else in the city. And so what point along this timeline do we actually just commit to a location and just go all in on it? And that may require some additional community engagement, as was discussed earlier. But I think we should do this. So I think I can accept Commissioner Simpson's motion, but I want to express very clearly to the staff that we ought to pick a location somewhere in the city, do the robust community engagement process to make sure everyone's on board, and then go all out on it. Don't do a temporary thing. Let's do a full-on built, landscaped, roundabout, so that everyone's on board. There's no surprises, and yeah, it may cost a little more, but then we know it'll be permanent because we've done engagement. So I think that's kind of all I'll say about that. So it's clear that we don't want to give this up, this idea of doing this somewhere in the city up. So why don't we just go all in somewhere, maybe somewhere more appropriate than Barrel, but then let's just actually do it and highlight it. And I'll be quiet now. Thanks.
No, Commissioner Mitt, obviously your comments are greatly appreciated and needed. Before I call the vote, though, I'll just throw in 2 cents. 1 cent for, it just came to me, with all the temporary traffic circles we've done, how when they get ready they're going to build a building, let's say, and they'll put a big, sometimes they're really big, like a 4-foot by 8-foot board that has the artist rendering, a picture of what it's going to look like when it's done. We've never done that you got this space in the middle of a temporary traffic circle. Why not put up an artist rendering of what it ultimately could look like, landscaped and concrete and all this, to give even the neighbors, specifically the neighbors, a vision of what it's going to look like. I mean, we've had it in our administrative reports before. We know what we know what the roundabout in South Redondo looks like. But when you go to these, I mean, even the ones in Fremona, okay, here's 3 streets in a row with the orange cones. And, it looks like a construction zone, which no neighbor is going to be able, obviously the neighbors have not been able to overcome that negative feeling they get when they see that what looks like road construction in the middle of 3 intersections. So that's maybe something that we would consider. And, 2, obviously doing, as was stated already, greater outreach to the public to really get as much buy-in as we can, and then ultimately to commit, because obviously a full-blown traffic circle is very expensive. And, and we take a little bit of grief from the community just for the cost alone, I think. So we've really got to be wise in where we propose these. So anyway, thank you for listening. We have a motion on the table, and I will call the vote. And on this one, Gene,
just real quick.
Yes.
I guess just point of couple clarifications. The renderings. We've done something like that. They're not like high-end, high-profile renderings, but we try our best to kind of show potentially what a traffic circle in its fullest form can look like in the middle of a roadway. But I do appreciate, I understand that, if we can get, I guess, more artistic renderings, aesthetically, at least, that would kind of draw more residents to really open their minds to what they can consider to be an alternative at these intersections. The second thing I wanted to say is, we're not completely disregarding traffic circles. And I'd also like to clarify that there's traffic circles and then there's roundabouts, which completely have 2 different functions altogether. Traffic circles are for the intent of reducing speeds, especially at the residential areas, right? A roundabout, on the other hand, is more for free flow operational benefits, so as to not have to have vehicles stop and jam up traffic. And so they have very different, the main distinguishing factor between the two is just from a just a size standpoint, because typically go on smaller roadways because they're residential streets, as opposed to roundabouts like the one down in Esplanade. That one's a little bit larger because we got the full-blown pork chops and everything. I mean, that just the footprint of that roundabout, even though it's in a single lane, is significantly larger than what a temporary or even a traffic circle would have been in that area. So cost-wise, you are correct. There is a huge difference, but functionality-wise, there's a huge difference as well. And so I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And then, as I said before, we're not completely abandoning the idea and saying we don't want to move forward. We're always looking out for these areas. I guess we're just trying to be a little bit more discerning about it, I guess would be a better way that I can kind of describe how staff is trying to move forward is, we do continue to think of locations for traffic circles. For larger roadway projects, I would love to look at roundabouts for larger, more, like when we were looking at the aviation corridor way back when, one of the options was an actual roundabout along aviation. And that was something that we were trying to look, not we as just the city of Redondo Beach, but Hermosa, Manhattan Beach. So we're all in on the idea of a traffic circle and a roundabout separately. We're just trying to be, I guess, a little bit more cognizant of the climate, of trying to get these to be approved and authorized. And at the same time, I mean, that's still an alternative should the commission decide to want to request staff to look at, to, kind of move forward and ask the council as an alternative should the commission decide to do that. So we're still open to it. I think we're just trying to be a little bit more sensitive and aware of kind of the resonance and the climate of how the traffic circles are being perceived. But we're open to, all these other alternatives, meaning like, methods, just going full blown. Hey, let's put in a $15,000 traffic circle here. Let's skip the temporary phase. Like we're in on that concept and the idea. We're just trying to be a little bit more wary and more cautious of how to proceed at this point.
Thank you. I did see our city engineer Wenji's hand go up. I will hand it to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation. And just to echo what Gene was saying, as a staff, you're preaching to the choir when you talk about roundabouts. We're very much in favor. We see the benefits. But we're 0 for 6, I think, if my count is correct, on these temporary installations. And yes, aesthetics comes up, but we also hear complaints about navigating them, about pedestrians navigating them, about children not knowing how to react to them. So there are a number of issues that have been raised. And to your point, Chair Funabashi, I think the conclusion I drew at the end of the conversation about Fremona was we can't do this half-heartedly. We just have to go all in and commit to something. That's about the same time we were going through that, the city of LA sent a flyer. We got a hold of a copy of a flyer where they were installing one in our neighborhood. And I don't know all of the preparatory work that went into that, but their discussion announcement about it was a rendering and a date when it was going to start construction. It wasn't really a conversation about, do you want this or not? So, of course, much bigger city, much deeper pockets, et cetera. But I think it makes sense for this commission to weigh in on the policy. Our current policy has been approved by the city council was to work with each of the council members distinctly to identify locations within their districts. And then if this body approved location for temporary roundabout installation, to move forward and not go back to the council until after the temporary has been installed and the 6 months or so of data has been collected about its performance. So maybe our model right now for testing these out is not helping us in that regard, and maybe it's time for some new thinking on how to approach these. Whether it's identifying the location and getting something in a CIP, or getting one of the council members who's really committed to this or something. I'm just saying the model, the framework we have to work in right now involves bringing these temporary locations to this body for an approval, and then an installation of a temporary roundabout or a mini traffic circle, and then 4 to 6 months of data collection, and then a report to the council with the public input and then a decision. So that model hasn't served us well, as I said, 0 for 6. So I'm perhaps, the part of the recommendation, or at least the thought that comes from this body, might be to try a new approach for how we go after these, with the council.
All right, thank you very much. Obviously, great input that we need to hear, obviously, from all sides. So, Commissioner Min, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah, I just wanted to just react a little bit to Andy's comments, and I think you're right. I think you're onto something. That the process in which was adopted to do a test thing just isn't working. So clearly we have to change that process. And I my day job, I do this. I am in public works, and I've done this. I've gone literally almost $100 million in grant funds this year to do this kind of thing. But it takes literally a year or a year and a half of community engagement to make it all work. And it's going to take a lot of work, and I understand that. There's ways to get some grant funds to do that, through the Sustainable Communities Planning grant process. So you can hire a consultant to do a formal process, go out there, you work with the council offices to find an ideal location and pitch the ideas, right? And get feedback. So I don't know if I'm not sure if it's appropriate to do a motion now because we have one on the table, but I agree with you. I think we should the commission should put forth a motion to reconsider the process and how we go about evaluating for these things, so that it opens up opportunity for a more all-in kind of effort versus let's play with it and toy with it, see how it goes, and then to make it real. But obviously, no one wants that. You've tried that your own 6, so let's just change that process. I'm not sure what the process is to do that, to recommend to the council a change in that. But however that is done, I'm all game for that.
Okay, thank you. And I think as a practical matter, just the comments that have been made, although it may not be incorporated specifically into our motion on the table, I think it could be extrapolated that Vice Chair Simpson's, tail end of the motion is obviously to explore locations. And with that, I would anticipate staff with our feedback and conversation here. We could certainly ask John if he's open to adding a little more detail to perhaps making it not only the locations, but the process, as was mentioned. But I would anticipate that staff will be looking at that process as well for future, presentations of potential locations. So I'm pretty comfortable, unless somebody feels a need to make a friendly amendment. But I also see now Jean's hand has gone up, and Commissioner Hannon, your hand's back up for a follow-up. So I'll hand it to Jean first, and then you. How's that?
I was just going to add, I forgot to add this in my previous portion, was that for the Riviera Village segment, Catalina Avenue, we are currently in the process of trying to begin some assessments to install roundabouts somewhere along the Riviera Village area along Catalina Avenue. I can't say which one specifically would meet the warrants and qualify for the roundabout, but that's definitely one of the alternatives down there that we are considering looking at for, I believe, from I to Elena, I believe. We're definitely open to it. We're definitely going to continue to look into it and look at roundabout and traffic circles as well as an intersection control alternative.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hannon.
I just wanted to say, I think it's a really good discussion, and I think there's something we probably should talk to City Council about, maybe coming up with a policy. It's sort of like the speed bump policy. There's only so many tools in a traffic calming box that we have at our disposal. And the fact is that, every situation is a little bit different. You need to evaluate, where a speed bump is really appropriate, where it's not, where a roundabout's appropriate, where it's not. I mean, these types of things should be made, I think, in the way of a standardization. The other thing I think we're lacking is marketing. I mean, it's like everything else, you've got to sell it. And I noticed, now I'm from Long Beach myself. In Long Beach, they must have 100 roundabouts. I'm probably exaggerating.
Big ones too, yeah.
But they have a lot of them. And I know my sister, my brother-in-law, my family lived down there, and I know before they do one of these, they deliver these pamphlets out that show you the advantages. They go from house to house. They do a great job socializing it with the neighbors. They know what to expect and why they're doing it, quite honestly. And it seems like it's much more well received, and they're much more positive about the outcome. So I think there's things we could do. The other thing I did want to say that I know that probably adding a stop sign at every intersection, maybe to some people might feel like it's an overkill. I think it's probably a great idea, but I think that, again, four-way stops versus a roundabout. But where we're going, it seems like, is the solution is to add a four-way stop at every intersection. And I think if we did put it in every intersection, we'd probably have more compliance with speed. We'd probably have safer pedestrians. We'd probably have a lot of benefits. But I think at the same time, we'd probably have a lot more traffic. We'd have a lot more cars sitting, spooled up on it at an intersection, spewing gas out of the back. So I think there's got to be a way that we can keep the cars moving. We can, at a moderate, lower speed, and have balance in our community. Anyway, the other, last but not least, I did want to say that I think even going, on Barrow with a 12-foot wide lane, I think is excessive. I'd still really like to encourage the staff to look at maybe narrowing that a little bit, because even from stop sign to stop sign, we're going to have automobiles that are going to be going faster than we'd like them to go, just because of that lane width. I mean, that's about the same width at 12 feet as we have on the freeway. And it does, in fact, create a little bit of a buffer zone for the car doors. Last but not least, 12 feet, stop and think about this. A full-size SUV is 6.5 feet wide, and that's about the biggest car on the road. And we're putting a lane, for 12 feet, and the average car is about 72 inches, by the way, in width. So 12 feet is more than enough. Matter of fact, it's excessive. We shouldn't have any lanes in the city unless they're main arteries like PCH that's 12 feet wide. Yet we're proposing it on this street. I would like to see that reduced.
I can respond to that real quick. I can respond to that real quick. I don't think they're 12 feet, because the way that we laid them out at 56 feet, they're 3 10-foot lanes, 1 lane in each direction with the 10-foot two-way left turn lane, and then 13-foot bike lane. So it's an 8-foot parking lane and 5-foot bike lane. So that gives us the 30 in the middle, and then the 13 to make 56. And so they're already at the 10-foot travel lanes.
Gene, it was on one of your charts. You might look at that then.
That was a previous proposal. But the way that the bike lanes got laid out, that's not how they got laid out. We made sure to have those lanes.
It was a chart you showed tonight. But okay.
Correct, because it was a previous proposal that was put together.
Okay, then I stand.
This recommendation that staff had, yeah.
Okay.
I apologize if that wasn't clear.
Okay, I apologize.
And I will add that we do have a project to resurface Barrow, separate and apart from this recommendation, where we will be adjusting the lane width to accommodate the 8-foot and the 5-foot. 8-foot parking, 5-foot two-stripe bike lane in each direction, along with the 10-foot travel lane and the 10-foot center lane. So that we hear you, and that's coming, and it's not explicitly as part of this recommendation because it's already in our plans to do it. as soon as we resurface that road.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you, Andy.
I'll just make one last quick comment and then I must call the vote. And that is, I think it's incumbent upon us to basically pull our council people back in, because they're the ones that have the captured audience with the support that can make or break these. Certainly, a significant number of results or comments that are made at even their monthly meetings is going to be a critical component, I think, to getting support and or the information we need up front of absolutely we do not want it, or yeah, we're kind of open to it. But again, to work with our council people, in the local neighborhoods. So, okay. So we have our motion. Jean, I was going to ask if you would to call each individual commissioner by name for their vote, please.
I certainly can do that. Commissioner Hannan,
Nay.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Glass,
Yes.
Commissioner Min,
Yes.
Vice Chair Simpson,
Yes.
and Chair Funabashi.
Yes. So I see we are 5-1 in favor of the motion. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so we'll move on to our next item. That's J2, discussion and possible action regarding the letter of support for the designation of Redondo Beach's section of the coastal bike path as part of US Bike Route 95. I'll hand it over to staff for the presentation.
All right, so my second item tonight, as Chair Funabashi had mentioned, is the US Bike Route 95 designation item, or joining the US Bike Route 95. So brief background on this. So there's this the US Bike Route system, or the USBRS, if you will. It's kind of a development of a national network of bicycle routes that connects urban and rural communities, through bike route signed roads and trails and things of that nature. And so this is generally created with public input where, the intent is to direct bicyclists to a preferred route through a city, through a county or state, and ultimately kind of creating these opportunities for people everywhere, bicyclists, but also people who aren't avid bicyclists, to travel and to use these bike routes as transportation, and of course recreation. So the bike route is developed through partnerships between transportation agencies. It was originally kind of established in 1978. I mentioned that it's kind of a national network of bike routes, and the way that this bike route is ultimately developed is through partnerships between transportation agencies, bike organizations, and then ultimately volunteers. And so these routes are nominated and approved by the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, or AASHTO, and basically by designation and volunteering, if you will, certain segments to be a part of this bike route. The designation would mean that the State Department and all the jurisdictions within that State Department, so typically in our case, it would be under Caltrans districts, basically all the cities that are part of this, supporting this, are basically saying, hey, we're on board with designating certain bike paths and bike routes within our city as part of this bicycle route system. So the efforts to update a lot of the US Bike Route system currently right now is being done by an association called the Adventure Cycling Association. They're kind of a nonprofit organization, and their mission is to empower, inspire, connect people to just generally travel by bicycle. They have they've accomplished numerous things, but a lot of them include kind of creating this bike route network, which includes maps. They also provide organized tours. I guess they have a magazine publication that's out. They're kind of they've taken it upon themselves to be kind of a national advocate. So they speak on behalf and try to get support from these city or these sub-jurisdictions and sub-agencies to kind of present to the higher agencies, if you will, for this designation. So as part of all these efforts, the City of Redondo Beach had been contacted by a representative from Adventure Cycling Association, specifically regarding this US Bike Route. There's a proposed portion, namely what they were going to designate as the US Bike Route 95, which includes basically the extension from I believe the northern tip of California, so from Crescent City all the way to San Diego is will be designated as this US Bike Route 95. And so this is just the portion that we have within our city. I could have shown a larger map, but basically it goes from Crescent City and it hugs the coast all the way down. And then once it gets to Redondo Beach, so right around here, Redondo, it'll come down through the the Class 4 cycle track that we have, go through our parking lot area, and then make its way out to Torrance Boulevard. And then Prospect, slightly east of Prospect, is where it will join with Torrance Boulevard as part of this US Bike Route 95 designation. So the route will follow the path into Fisherman's Wharf and then use Coral Way and then ultimately connect to Torrance Boulevard onto the city of Torrance. This is just kind of a close-up of how the route is being designated, if you will. As an additional item I'd like to include, it doesn't include any additional signage or anything of that nature. It's all within this US Bike Route, a GIS map and online network, since we are in support, and once we provide enough support to Caltrans, and Caltrans would ultimately deem that they support to AASHTO, that this portion within our city will be included as part of the US Bike Route 95. So the recommendation to the commission is as follows: to discuss and provide any direction to staff to forward to the city council regarding this letter of support that we provided to include Redondo Beach's section of the existing Pacific Coast Bike Route as a designated part of US Bike Route 95. And that concludes my presentation. I'm here for any questions.
All right, thank you, Gene. Commission, I think that's pretty cut and dry. And in the staff report, I was mindful of all the other cities that have signed on, but obviously want to give each of you an opportunity to ask questions or make any comments. So with that, unless maybe I'll just go for the hand raise. And I see Vice Chair Simpson's hand up. You have the floor.
This looks to me like a very, it's a no-brainer. I mean, we should support this. It's a wonderful thing. It improves availability for cyclists. It gets Redondo Beach on the map in a positive way. We absolutely should recommend that this go forward.
All right. Any other comments or commissions before, or comments or questions, I should say, before we look for a motion? I'm going through I see Commissioner Hannon.
Well, I couldn't be more excited, I'll tell you.
All right.
Think it's a wonderful opportunity, and I've ridden my bike down our coastline, and it is something that everybody should do, honestly. It is just absolutely an incredible feat. But one of the things that comes to mind, though, I know that they want to use our existing harbor bike lane. It goes down through the pier, and then from that point it cuts up on Torrance Boulevard, which we don't really have a formal way to get from that Class 1 bike lane up to the cul-de-sac on on Torrance Boulevard. I know that people will probably do it with or without a formal way to get there, but most of these people do these tours during the summer, and we know we've got big crowds down there. So it seems like we should challenge ourselves to do something a little bit more formal and connect Torrance Boulevard to that existing Class 1 bike lane, as well as when you get up to Catalina and Cross Catalina, we know that there's no bike infrastructure from that point on till we get on the other side of PCH. So I think there's some work we need to do, and there's probably grant money to do it with. And I know Caltrans, I think, is also, there's maybe some opportunity for grant money in there for this this additional infrastructure. Other than that, I'm absolutely in favor of it, and I'm ecstatic over it. Thank you.
All right, and I see now Commissioner Min's hand up.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I think this is a great idea. I did have a couple questions for Eugene. This is not turning over any kind of right-of-way or maintenance responsibilities? Is it to Caltrans or anyone else? Okay. And does this also open up opportunity, as kind of Commissioner Hannon mentioned, for additional funding from the feds in any way or from Caltrans?
That may be possible. That may be possible. I don't think that was explicit within the ancillary benefits of designation, but that may be something, at least, we can definitely put in when we pursue grants related to bike facilities and things of that nature. I believe it's something that we can include as part of that.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I didn't think so, but I was a little bit concerned. Okay, well, if this is designated as a Caltrans type thing, that they're going to want some kind of say anytime we want to touch it or change it or upgrade it or anything like that. So it doesn't sound like that's the case. So this is a great idea. Thank you.
All right, I'm looking around my little screen here. Obviously, I'm seeking a motion, and I will give Commissioner Hannon the first option at the honor.
Yes. I'll make the motion to write a letter in support of this SRBR or USBR 95 extension through Redondo Beach.
Okay, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
I will second.
I'll go ahead, Mr.
I heard Commissioner Garcia first, so that
Okay.
we have a motion on the floor with a second. And Gina, again, at this time, if you would call the vote individually, please.
If I can interrupt you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just wanted to make sure you check for public comment on that.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for reminding me. Do we have any public comment?
For the record, there is no public comment at this time.
Very well. Thank you. Okay, then we can call the vote.
Commissioner Glass,
Yes, positive.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Min,
Yes.
Commissioner Hannon,
Yes.
Vice Chair Simpson,
Yes.
and Chair Funabashi.
Yes. So with that, we are unanimous. I look forward to seeing how that does develop. That'll be kind of interesting and exciting for the cyclists. All right. We are at item K on our agenda, one of our favorites. That is member items and referrals to staff. And with that, if I might, I'll just go through the dais as I have previously. Commissioner Glass, do you have anything for staff?
I do, as long missed for the last couple of meetings. Two items. Number one, since we've been talking about bikes a lot today, I repeat one of my observations of late, and that is that bicyclists are wholly everywhere that I see them running stop signs at crosswalks, and I almost hit somebody the other day who, ran through right in front of me as I was stopped at a stop sign. I think we ought to give thought to somehow marking stop signs that they apply to bicycles too. Now, I know there's a little bicycle sign, and I hate to spend money on it, but I think they need a reminder that, since they don't get licenses, there's no training to ride a bike. We need to remind them that they have to follow the law and what the law is. Okay, that's item one. Item two, I think, maybe Ted, you can check on this for me. At Green and Bataan, a couple of weeks ago, I don't know how, but a fire hydrant cut loose, and it was removed and capped off. But there's still a little bit of a low flow of water coming there. The hydrant has not been replaced. I'm not sure who's responsible for that. But we have a place on the southeast corner of Bataan and Green that's missing a hydrant.
Yeah, we'll check with Cal Water, Commissioner Glass. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's it. I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Glass. Commissioner Garcia.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Hannon.
Yeah, I would like to ask staff to review the Class 2 bike lane on Barrel between PCH and North Prospect to ensure that the bike lane is at least 5 feet wide, as noted in best practices design manual, and also, you know, safe to accommodate children and families. I mean, we do have elementary schools in that area as well as middle schools, and those are the people that will be using this bike lane. So we need to make sure that they're really, it's the best we can accommodate. Thank you.
Here,
Can I
here.
ask you to repeat that limits of Barrel Avenue? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, it was on Barrel between PCH. In other words, it's basically north of what we were talking, the segment we were talking about today, and all the way up to North Prospect. And I know there's some segments in there that are probably less than 5 feet wide, but there's also segments and markings that are definitely in conflict with some parked cars along that road. So
Thank you.
I think it could use some redesigning maybe.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's it.
All right then, Commissioner Min.
Just a friendly reminder that I know, Andrew, you had mentioned last meeting that the city of Torrance was working on a stormwater type effort with other South Bay cities, and definitely still interested in having them come and present to this commission whenever they're ready. Hopefully sooner than later. I think it'd be a very interesting topic for all of us to hear and provide some comments on.
Yeah, that's a timely request. We have a meeting set up with them. I believe it's tomorrow morning or Thursday morning for with their PR firm as our kickoff meeting for that. So we'll certainly incorporate a presentation to this group as an idea for that meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Before I move on to Vice Chair Simpson, I see our Public Works Director, Mr. Saman, hand go up.
Thank you, Chair Funabashi. I will wait till the commission is over. I just got a couple of announcements to make for you.
Okay, very good. Then I will hand the floor over to Vice Chair Simpson.
Very quickly, sometime back, we started some traffic calming efforts on Ford Avenue between Aviation and Artesia. It included repositioning some stop sign lines and putting some lines to narrow the traffic lanes. And as I recall, we were going to have some radar feedback signs in there, weren't we? At some point, or and if that's the case, they're not there yet. Am I remembering that incorrectly? Were there radar feedback signs planned for there?
You are correct. We're this close to finalizing a co-op to get some reasonable pricing, if you will, budget conscious pricing. So that's kind of what the delay was. We're trying to there's an opportunity to get on a co-op and a piggyback agreement to get lower pricing on those units.
So
those are right around the corner.
Thank you.
Anything else? Otherwise, I will hand it over to Director Saman.
Thank you,
Okay.
Chair Funabashi. Just a couple of announcements for you. Tomorrow night, Gene and I are invited to Councilmember Lowenstein's District 2 meeting, at which time we'll be talking about one of your items tonight, which is the Barrel Avenue corridor improvements that you guys discussed tonight. So thank you for the direction. We will be sharing that information with the residents. That includes both the recommendation to install the always top controls, as well as the commission's desire to continue to pursue the mini circles or roundabouts, depending on the roadway configurations that we have. And if you'd like to join us, get on Councilmember Lowenstein's website, and he has a Zoom invitation that you can go ahead and join us there. The other is not an invitation, mostly informational. As you know, Metro is out soliciting input right now. They're going through their virtual scoping meeting for what they now call Line C extension, which is the Green Line extension from our current station on the north end of the city down to the Torrance Transit Center that's in construction today. They're looking for input from the community There's a meeting tomorrow night. It's from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's virtual. There's another meeting on Saturday, and Saturday's meeting is between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. If any of you would like to see that and you have not seen those emails, please let me or Jean know, and I will forward you the information from Metro regarding the meeting itself.
Okay, thank you. I did see Commissioner Glass's hand go up.
On your last comment, Ted, about the routing of the sea line, I know that they're deciding whether to take the so-called Hawthorne route or the right-of-way route. But one of the concerns that came up in a recent meeting I was at with Councilwoman MD, among others, involved the transit center that's being built next to the Target. And that if Metro chooses the Hawthorne route, passengers who want to go from the C train to the transit center or vice versa are going to have a long walk. What thought is being given to facilitating, movement of people between the two, if that turns out to be the choice?
Thank you, Commissioner Glass, and you're absolutely right. The scoping meetings are actually for them to kick off and identify the scope of the environmental impact report that they'll be doing. And as part of that environmental impact report, they'll be assessing both of those alignments, the Hawthorne alignment that comes down Marine to the 405 right-of-way to Hawthorne Boulevard versus coming down the existing right-of-way all the way into Torrance. In both of those, about 2 years ago, the City Council actually had written their preferred alternative, or at least alignment, that was relayed over to Metro, and they are part of the comments that are being explored by Metro, one of which, including if they were to choose the Hawthorne alignment, that they would contemplate connectivity from there to our transit center. And yet that would be one of the elements that they'll be studying as part of their assessment.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All right. Obviously, that's a very hot topic that we'll be following. Our city engineer, Winji, did I see your hand go up there?
Yeah, just in the good news category, thank you. Just wanted to confirm, I've hinted at it before to this group, but we did receive affirmation that we were awarded the MAT grant that I spoke about for the Redondo Beach Boulevard corridor, which also includes Grant in our street and Ripley, in our city rather, and Ripley from Flagler. So essentially from Flagler and all the way to El Camino College, along Ripley, Grant, through the Galleria Mall and onwards. We have a grant to improve bicycle and pedestrian improvements to provide for increased ATP mobility there. So $6.6 million grant over 5 years. The initial year or two will be, environmental and planning and that kind of thing. But we're excited about that, excited to be able to report that out to you, and already have some good ideas for some particular intersections in our city to make those better crossings and more useful and more safe for cyclists and pedestrians.
All right. Well, that is super news. Thank you for sharing that. Always grateful for outside funding when we can do some good stuff in the city with other sources of revenue. That's great. All right. Well, seeing no other business before our commission this evening, although Commissioner Hannon, you'll have the final word before we adjourn.
I just wanted to tell everybody that the South Bay COG, I think Ted sent us an invite here recently, and if you haven't attended one of these, they're very interesting. It's worthwhile. I'd encourage each one of you to take advantage of this and attend that meeting. So that's it. Thank you, guys. Great.
That's a virtual meeting, right?
Yes,
Correct.
it's virtual. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'll make a
that's
motion to adjourn.
Okay. Very good. Do we have a second to adjourn?
I second.
We do. All right. The time is 8:30, and as a commission, we will adjourn to our next regular meeting, 7 p.m. April 26th, 2021. So with that, I'll wish all of you a good evening, and thank you for good work tonight.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. See you guys.